This story, titled The Hidden Meetings, begins with a man named Michael. Michael is 37, living in a cozy suburban neighborhood in Texas. His life seemed ordinary, yet content. He had a stable job in IT, a dog named Max who greeted him every evening with wagging enthusiasm, and a girlfriend of 4 years, Jessica, whom he truly loved. Jessica was his anchor, supportive, kind, and full of laughter that could light up the darkest room. Their relationship wasn't perfect. Whose is? But it was steady, or so Michael thought. He had plans to propose, even picking out a ring during his lunch breaks. Jessica had often spoken about their future together, too, weaving dreams of shared vacations and a life filled with simple joys. But lately, things felt different. Jessica had started pulling away in subtle ways. At first, Michael chalked it up to work stress. She had taken on a demanding new project in marketing. Her texts became fewer, her calls shorter. On weekends, when they used to spend hours binge-watching shows or hiking, Jessica began finding excuses. Dinners with friends, errands that lasted all day, or just needing me time. Michael wasn't one to overthink. He trusted Jessica implicitly. But trust, as they say, isn't immune to cracks. One Friday evening, Michael decided to surprise Jessica. He stopped by her apartment with her favorite takeout, Thai food, and an extra order of spring rolls. As he walked up the stairs, he noticed her car parked outside, so he knew she was home. Yet, when he knocked, there was no answer. He knocked again, louder this time, balancing the takeout in one hand. Still nothing. His heart sank. Pulling out his phone, he called her. The phone rang, and through the door, he faintly heard her ringtone. She was definitely inside. "Jessica?" He called out. "It's me." The door finally creaked open, and there she stood. Her face was flushed, her hair slightly messy. "Michael, I wasn't expecting you." "Clearly," he said with a small laugh, though unease began to stir in his gut. "I thought I'd surprise you." Jessica glanced behind her, just for a second, but long enough for Michael to catch it. He followed her gaze into the living room. There was nothing unusual, except for 2 coffee mugs on the table. One of them wasn't hers. "Who's here?" he asked before he could stop himself. Jessica hesitated. "No one. I was just cleaning. That's why I didn't hear you knocking." The explanation felt too neat, too rehearsed. But Michael didn't push. He left that night feeling unsettled, though he told himself he was being paranoid. Until it happened again. 2 weeks later, Michael was scrolling through social media when a photo caught his attention. It wasn't on Jessica's profile, but on a mutual friend's account. There she was, sitting at an outdoor cafe, smiling, and sitting across from her was a man Michael didn't recognize. The caption read, "Catching up with old friends." Michael stared at the photo, his chest tightening. Jessica hadn't mentioned meeting anyone that day. When he confronted her later, she brushed it off. "Oh, that's just Eric," she said casually. "He's an old friend from college. We bumped into each other a few weeks ago and decided to grab coffee. It's nothing, really." But it didn't feel like nothing to Michael. Eric's name started popping up more often. Jessica would mention running into him at the grocery store or grabbing a quick lunch because he happened to be in the area. Every time she said his name, Michael's stomach churned. He tried to dismiss it. After all, he had no proof of anything inappropriate. But deep down, an uneasy voice whispered, "Something isn't right." The breaking point came one evening when Jessica accidentally left her phone on the couch while she went to the kitchen. Michael wasn't the type to snoop, but when her screen lit up with a text from Eric, "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." His heart stopped. Jessica returned to find Michael holding her phone, his face pale. "What is this?" he asked, his voice shaking as he held up the screen. Jessica froze, her eyes wide. "Michael, it's not what you think." "Then tell me," he demanded. "What is it? What does he mean by last night?" She sighed, sitting down across from him. "Eric and I have been talking, reconnecting. But it's not what you think. We've just been catching up as friends, I swear." Michael felt a surge of anger and disbelief. "Friends? Jessica, this isn't catching up. This is betrayal. You've been meeting him behind my back, lying to me about it." "I didn't lie," she protested. "I just didn't tell you because I knew you'd overreact. Eric and I have history, yes, but it's in the past. I'm with you now." Michael's voice cracked. "How am I supposed to believe that? You've been hiding this from me for weeks, Jessica. How do I know there's nothing more going on?" Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "Because I love you, Michael. I messed up by not telling you, but I would never cheat on you. You have to believe me." But Michael didn't know what to believe anymore. That night, Michael left Jessica's apartment, unsure of what to do. The trust they had built over 4 years felt shattered, like a fragile vase dropped on the floor. Over the next few days, Jessica tried to reassure him. She sent texts, called, even showed up at his door once with an apology letter. But every time Michael thought about forgiving her, the image of Eric's text haunted him. Was she telling the truth? Was it really innocent? Or was he just being played for a fool? Michael's mind was a whirlwind of doubt and pain. He thought about their history, the good times they'd shared, and the future they had once planned. But now, all he could see was the cracks in their foundation. Michael spent the next week in turmoil, caught between love and betrayal. He wanted to believe Jessica, to trust that her connection with Eric was purely innocent. But the text message replayed in his mind like a haunting melody. Last night was amazing. Every time he tried to rationalize it, his gut screamed otherwise. He knew he couldn't move forward without answers, but confronting Jessica again felt like walking into a battlefield where the stakes were his own heart. One evening, Michael decided to seek clarity, not from Jessica, but from someone who might offer an unbiased perspective, his older sister, Clara. Clara was the kind of person who never sugarcoated the truth. She'd been through a tough divorce years ago, and her wisdom often came from her own scars. As they sat in her living room over a pot of tea, Michael laid everything out, the secret meetings, the text message, Jessica's insistence that it was all innocent. Clara listened intently, her face unreadable. When Michael finished, she sighed. "Do you love her?" she asked. "Of course," Michael said without hesitation. "But love isn't enough if I can't trust her." Clara nodded. "You're right. Trust is everything. But here's the thing, Michael. You need to decide if this relationship is worth fighting for. If it is, you can't just sit in this limbo of doubt. You need to get to the bottom of it, even if it's uncomfortable." Michael looked at her, his eyes heavy with uncertainty. "And if I find out she's lying?" Clara placed a hand on his. "Then you walk away with your dignity intact. But don't let suspicion destroy something that might still be salvageable. Be sure before you make a decision you can't undo." Inspired by Clara's advice, Michael decided to confront Jessica one last time. But this time, he wouldn't let his emotions cloud the conversation. He wanted clarity, closure, and the unfiltered truth. That Friday, he invited Jessica over to his apartment. She arrived looking nervous, clutching a bottle of wine as a peace offering. "Michael," she began as soon as she stepped inside, "I'm so glad you called. I've been dying to talk." "Sit down," he interrupted gently. His tone wasn't angry but firm. Jessica hesitated before settling onto the couch. Michael took a deep breath. "I need you to be honest with me, Jessica. No more excuses, no more half-truths. What is really going on between you and Eric?" Jessica's eyes welled up, and she looked away as though searching for the right words. "We've been talking a lot, more than I should have allowed. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand." Michael's heart sank. "Out of hand? What does that mean?" She hesitated, then continued. "Eric and I dated briefly in college. It didn't work out, but we stayed friends. When we reconnected, I guess I got caught up in the nostalgia. It felt nice to talk to someone who knew me from back then." Michael leaned forward, his voice tight. "Jessica, did you or did you not cross a line with him?" Her silence was deafening. Finally, she whispered, "We kissed once. It was a mistake, and I regretted it immediately. I swear it didn't go any further than that." Michael felt as though the air had been knocked out of him. A kiss. The very thing he had feared was now confirmed. "You betrayed me," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "Do you realize how much you've hurt me?" Jessica sobbed. "I know, Michael, and I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was stupid, careless. But it didn't mean anything, I swear to you." Michael stood up, pacing the room. "It didn't mean anything? Jessica, how am I supposed to believe that when you've been lying to me for weeks?" She stood too, reaching for him, but he stepped back. "Please, Michael. I love you. I don't want to lose you. I'll cut Eric out of my life completely. Just give me another chance." The room was heavy with emotion as Michael wrestled with his thoughts. He wanted to believe her, to forgive her, but the trust they once shared felt shattered beyond repair. "Jessica," he said finally, his voice breaking, "I need time. I can't just move past this overnight." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I understand. Take all the time you need. Just please don't give up on us." As she left that night, Michael felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. He had his answers, but they brought no comfort, only more questions. Could their relationship survive this? Or was it time to let go of the woman he thought he'd spend his life with? In the days that followed, Michael threw himself into work, trying to distract himself from the storm in his heart. Friends and colleagues noticed his distant demeanor, but he brushed off their concerns. One afternoon, Clara called him. "How are you holding up?" she asked gently. Michael sighed. "I don't know, Clara. Part of me wants to forgive her, but the other part feels like I'll never trust her again." Clara was quiet for a moment. "Michael, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means deciding whether the love you have is worth rebuilding on new terms. Only you can answer that." Michael thanked her, though her words left him more conflicted than ever. A week later, Jessica showed up unannounced at his door. She looked tired, her eyes puffy as though she hadn't slept in days. "Michael, I know you asked for time, but I needed to see you," she said, her voice trembling. "I need to know if you're willing to try again, because if not, I'll respect your decision, but I can't live in this limbo anymore." Michael looked at her, his heart heavy. He saw the woman he had loved for 4 years, the woman who had been his partner, his confidant, but he also saw the cracks in their relationship, the pain caused by her actions. "Jessica," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I love you, I always have. But love isn't enough if I can't trust you, and right now, I don't know if I can." Her face crumpled, and she nodded. "I understand," she whispered. "I need time," he continued. "Time to figure out if this is something we can rebuild. And you need to figure out why you allowed this to happen in the first place." Jessica reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "I hope we can find our way back to each other," she said softly. Michael didn't respond, and after a moment, she turned and left. As the door closed behind her, Michael sat down, his mind swirling with thoughts. He didn't know what the future held, but for now, he needed to focus on healing, both for himself and for whatever might come next. Because sometimes, love isn't about holding on, it's about knowing when to let go. If this story resonates with you, please like, comment, and subscribe.